Welcome to the official garment channel. In this series, we'll be recreating the 1000 euro Vetements inspired denim. We'll start from the most basic shape, a square. We'll learn how to alter it and step by step transform it into a wearable pair of trousers made in your size. We'll develop the patterns in CLO3D, the industry-leading software. Then, we'll print them on a generic A4 printer and use the patterns to cut the fabric and create the piece at home. If you've never designed any garments but feel like you just want to give it a shot, this series is the ideal place to start, as it will teach you how to think like a designer. We won't be referencing any pattern making books, since they don't offer the right kind of information for absolute beginners. Instead, we'll just start from scratch. This will help you develop your eye for design by understanding the why, not the how, behind every single feature. But the journey doesn't end there. We'll learn how to bring the real-life pair of denim back into the digital realm, dress our avatar, and ultimately create these truly innovative visuals. We're breaking down every single step behind our workflow, a workflow that helped us get to 2.5 million monthly reach on Instagram. Without any further ado, let's get started with the design stage. And here we are inside the CLO3D. Since this is an absolute beginner tutorial, I'm gonna run you through the basics. On the top left side, you're gonna find the library, which is basically where all of the assets that you could possibly use inside a CLO3D are located. And I have already added a lot of custom folders for mine, but you don't have to worry about that at all. The only thing we need is an avatar, as in a character that we want to actually dress. So I'm gonna double click on the avatar tab, and as you can see, options opened up here. So I'm gonna go for male V2, and I'm just gonna choose one of the characters. I always go for Henry, so let's just do Henry. And there is no actual difference between them. The body type is exactly the same, it's only the head and the hair that is different. So go with whichever one inspires you. Oh, and if your CLO3D looks different than mine, that's because I stick to an older version of CLO3D. This one has proven to be incredibly stable. It's version 7.0, and you can just install an older version from the official CLO3D website. And if you encounter any sort of bugs, I do encourage you to stick to this version here. On the right side in the 2D window, you can also see an outline for our avatar, which every now and then comes in handy. So for instance, if I wanted to do a panel to the correct size of this, it would be quite easy. I can just look at the outline. And how exactly did I move up and down, and how am I zooming? Well, for CLO3D, you do need a mouse. You can potentially operate it without. You have to go through the preferences, change some settings, but it's never gonna be as fluent as when you do actually have a mouse. So in order to pan, as in move up, down, left, right, you want to hold down the middle click of the mouse. And as you're holding it down, you want to just move. And this also applies in the 3D window, so we can do exactly the same operation here or here. What about zooming in? Well, with the mouse, again, very easy. You just want to use the scroll wheel up and down, and it applies to the 3D window as well. How about rotating? Say you are working on a pair of pants and you want to rotate around the back, on the profile, towards the front. Use the right click, press it down, hold it down, and just move. And of course, this doesn't work in the 2D window since there is no third dimension. And if you want to reset the viewer, in case you find yourself lost, on the keyboard you can just press 1, which takes you to the 45-degree perspective, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 doesn't do anything, and 8 takes you towards the back. Not on the numpad, this has to be on the main keyboard. And now, if you're on a laptop and you don't have access to a mouse, here's what you have to do. First thing, you want to click on Settings, User Settings, View Controls, and we can see that pan is assigned to the middle mouse button. But since we don't have one, and the left mouse click and the right click are already assigned to something else, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna click on the drop down, and I wanna select Alt as my option, and then I'm gonna switch the middle mouse button with the right mouse button. I'm gonna press close. So Alt plus right click allows me to pan, and it works both in the 3D and the 2D window. The right click rotates, and we can use gestures on the trackpad in order to zoom in and out. So I'm using 2 fingers, sliding up in order to zoom in and sliding down in order to zoom out. And with that out of the way, why don't we start constructing the trousers? I'm gonna press S, which opens up this tool here called the rectangle tool. I'm gonna click in the 2D window and this menu pops up, which has width, height. I'm just gonna press OK. And as you can see, this has automatically created a square, but it's clearly not gonna fit our body very well, unless we're trying to do a skirt, which is not the case here. In the 2D window, I'm gonna head over to this menu here, which is by default on the textured surface view. Let's switch to the transparent surface. And it may look like the fabric is gone, but don't worry, it's not. The fabric is the same as it was before, it only changes the way that we look at the patterns in order to make our life easier when it comes to editing them. So if you've never seen pants ever in your life, how would you go about this? How would you start designing the pattern pieces? Well, here's what I'm thinking. I want to grab the square and I first of all want to make it narrower since at the moment it's extremely wide. And I also want to make it longer so at least it extends all the way to where the shoe is. And you probably noticed that in the 2D window, we have an outline of the avatar from the 3D window, and it is to scale. So we're gonna use the outline as a reference for our basic dimensions. I'm gonna press A, which allows me to move the pattern piece, and I want to snap it right down the middle. In terms of height, I'm gonna raise it to this point here, so simply dragging it up. And now if I want to only select this segment and bring it down, you're gonna see the limitations of the A tool. It doesn't let me do that. There is another tool, an extremely important one that you can find here. It's called Edit Pattern, or alternatively, we're gonna press Z on our keyboard. And with this tool, I am now allowed to select segments and move them around. I'm gonna press Escape on my keyboard in order to cancel the operation. And I can also select the segment points and move them around. And if I release, you're gonna see that the pattern piece is now completely changed. I'm gonna press Ctrl Z since we didn't want to alter it that way. And this time, I'm just gonna grab this segment and I want to start dragging it down all the way to where the sneaker outline is. And in order to be 100% sure that we're dragging it vertically, I can also hold down the Shift button. And we are now limited to only moving diagonally, vertically, or horizontally. In our case, let's do vertically. Drag it all the way down and release the left click. Let's also try and make it narrower. I'm gonna grab the segment on the right side, hold down Shift, and I'm gonna move it right up against the outline. So I can even zoom in, drag it, hold down Shift, and let's make sure that it aligns with this. Boom. And congratulations, you've just made the worst possible front panel. But don't worry, we're gonna go through a lot of extra steps in order to actually give it some proper shape. But here it is. It matches the height, it kind of matches the width, and I want to use the same panel in order to create another component for the front. So I'm gonna press A, select the entire pattern, and just like in any other software, I'm gonna do Ctrl C and Ctrl V in order to paste it. Just gonna click it here. And you can probably tell that this is not gonna be enough. We also need the panels for the back. So let's copy the same ones and just reuse them at the back as well. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and I'm gonna place it here. And now I'll go to the opposite leg, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and I'm gonna place it with a slight gap in between. To move the panels towards the back, I'm gonna press 5 on my keyboard, which takes me to the top view. And I'm gonna select one, drag it over, click on the other one, and just drag it over. This one has a gap in between. Let me just move it so it's not confusing. And now let's turn on the simulation, which is just a fancy name for visualizing how the fabric would behave in the real world. You can press it here, or you can just press space on your keyboard. Okay, so something happened. It's not exactly what we want. What do you think the problem is? I'm gonna do Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z till I get back to this stage where I have all 4 components. Here's the thing, CLO3D is not a very smart software. It doesn't know that you are designing trousers, and therefore it's not gonna sew them for you. You have to learn how to sew them yourself. I'm gonna introduce a new tool which is called the segment sewing, or you can just press N on your keyboard. To create a sewing line, I have to select the two segments that I want to sew together. So I'm gonna click here, and I also want to click here. Now I'm gonna sew it on the opposite side, so I wanna click on the front panel, click on the back panel. Let's try and simulate now. I'm gonna press space, and we still have a bit of an issue, the panels fell to the ground. I'm gonna do Ctrl Z till I reach this point, and let's also try to connect them at the front by clicking on the two segments and at the back. Simulate, and yeah, we tried to do the Vetements and now we're left with a very tight, not so fashionable skirt. Turns out fashion design is not that straightforward. I'm gonna stop the simulation, and now we have to figure out how we can open up the legs here in the front and at the back while still leaving them sewn towards the top. I'm gonna introduce a new tool, which is called the Edit Sewing tool. I'm gonna select the sewing line at the front, and I'm gonna press backspace on my keyboard in order to delete it. And if I wanted to do N again, you're gonna notice that this is never gonna work, because N only sews entire segments together, but that's not what we wanna do. We only wanna sew a specific portion of our entire segment, and for that there is another tool called the free sewing, or shortcut M. As you probably noticed, there is a shortcut for all of the important operations. Which brings us to rule number 1. Use the keyboard shortcuts. Learn them once and never worry about the tools again. I want to start at the top, and I want to take it down to around this point where I can visibly see the crotch. Click, and now let's sew it with the opposite segment. So start at the top and take it down. So basically with M, instead of 2 clicks, we need to do 4 clicks for every single sewing operation. You tell CLO where you want your first sewing line to start, where you want it to end, and then for the sewing line where it connects to, you want to tell it where you want it to start and where you want it to end. Now I'm gonna press space in order to simulate, and this actually worked. So we opened up the front. Why don't we try a different technique for the back? I'm gonna press B again for the Edit Sewing tool. Instead of deleting it and redoing it, I'm gonna show you another technique. I'm gonna select the end of my sewing line here at the bottom, and I'm gonna manually drag it up. So using the Edit Sewing tool, we can slide the entire sewing line, or we can edit each end individually. I'm gonna press space in order to simulate, and this doesn't seem to work. It bunches up the fabric, which looks kind of interesting, doesn't it? But it's not what we want. Why do you think that this happened? Exactly. When I edited the sewing line, I only moved one side. We also want to match it up onto the opposite side. So I'm gonna grab this point here at the bottom and start lifting it up, and I'm gonna zoom in, and very conveniently, you're gonna notice the small blue dot, which pretty much tells me exactly where I want to stop with my sewing line in order to have them matching. In the vast majority of situations, you want your sewing lines to match. I'm gonna press space again in order to simulate. We ended up with this. Another skirt, a very tight skirt, a very ill-fitting skirt, but it still feels like we're making progress, because if we sew those two components together, chances are it's gonna turn into pants. But even before I do that, there is a very important step that we have to follow. We have to figure out a way to make those patterns actually fit the body. Because if I go into this menu here and open the strain map, you're gonna notice that everything is in the red. You're also gonna notice the gray outline at the back. Let's quickly fix it. In order to make multiple selections in CLO3D, you wanna hold down Shift and click again. And now I wanna right click, and I'm gonna flip the normal, which moved the gray side towards the interior of the garment and left us with the white side towards the exterior, which is exactly what you want to see. The gray should be towards the interior, the white should be towards the exterior. And now I'm gonna teach you a trick that I only recently discovered and that has completely changed my workflow when it comes to trousers. It's much easier to design super high-waisted trousers and then for one single step, cut them to your desired height. I know it sounds kind of weird, but check this out. I'm gonna open up the basic circumference measure avatar tool, And I want to click once right below the belly button, hold down Shift, and you need to create a couple more points in order to have a full measurement. Just make sure that you're holding down Shift so it goes horizontal to the ground. Then I'm gonna go here into this menu, hold down the left click, and I want to use the Attach to Measure avatar. This tool allows me to select a segment and snap it onto a measurement. So I'm gonna select this one from the front, select the two at the back, this one and this one. So you click once the segment, the second time you click onto the measurement. And when I press simulate now, you're gonna see how it automatically pulled everything up. And even if I drag the pant down, it's gonna stay there. I'm gonna stop the simulation, and next up I wanna make sure that the segments here that get sewn onto the body actually have the same measurement as the body. So I'm gonna open up my calculator and I want to type in 835.5, and on top of this value I want to add an extra 2.5 centimeters. So I'm gonna do plus 25 equals. And the reason why I'm doing that is the avatar is a statue. It doesn't breathe, it doesn't move at all, but in reality, once you breathe, your stomach extends out. When you sit down, your belly has a different angle. That's why we need to add a few extra centimeters compared to our default measurement. So now back to the calculator, I'm gonna grab this value, and since we have 4 equally sized segments, I want to divide this value by 4. Equals. So we know that every single one of those segments should be 215.125. At the moment, they're only 177.3. So how exactly do we do that? Well, check this out. You take the value that you want and divide it by the value that you currently have. So I'm gonna press division 177.3 equals, and you want to multiply this number by 100 equals. I'm gonna grab this value 121.33 to the second decimal point, right click, and I'm gonna do copy. And now back in CLO3D, I'm gonna press A, I'm gonna make a selection box over all of our components, and from one of the corners, I'm gonna press the left click, start moving, and you can see that the pieces are being scaled up or down, but we want to use the value from the calculator. So as I am dragging, I'm also gonna press right click on my mouse, and this allows me to input a percentage that I want to scale the entire thing by. So I'm gonna do Control V, and it automatically grabs the value from the calculator, 121.33, and now I'm gonna press OK. And what this did is it made the panels much bigger than they were previously. I'm gonna press space in order to simulate. I'm gonna drag them down. You're gonna notice that since we scaled the entire thing, the pants are a lot longer. The redness is a bit more contained. It is still present. This is still not a wearable trouser by any means, but towards the waistline, we no longer have an issue. So we are making progress. Design is a highly iterative process. You go step by step, find the issue, solve it, move on to the next issue, solve it, and so on and so forth until your product reaches the shelves of high-end boutiques. But this is what it looks like at this stage. I'm gonna go in the 2D window, and I want to just grab all the pattern pieces and rearrange them a tiny bit. I want to move them so they make a bit more sense visually. There we go. And I'm gonna grab the base for all the components, hold down Shift, and start lifting them up. Get them onto the sneaker. Start the simulation. There we go. So at least we shorten them. Before we do any further alterations, we have to replace the default fabric with the fabric that we are actually going to be making the pants out of. This one is a very elastic, drapey fabric, but we intend to make ours out of denim raw, one of the stiffest fabrics possible. Over in the library tab, there is the fabric folder. I'm going to double click, I'm going to scroll down and find the denim raw. Left click and start dragging it over into the object browser on top of the default fabric. And once I release, well, it seems like nothing actually happened. But That's not the case. You have to understand that CLO3D has different viewers for different purposes. Most of the time, we're not going to be looking at the denim raw, super dark texture. Let me just show it quickly to you. If I switch over from the transparent surface viewer to the textured surface, there you go. Denim. But this ends up making the design stage a bit more confusing. Look at this, the segment points, they have the same shade. It makes it more difficult to see them. Compare that to doing something like the monochromatic view or the transparent view. You want to stick to one of these and only at the end worry about the fabric. The only reason why I applied it from this very stage is because the fabric actually influences the simulation. Have a look at this. I'm gonna start the simulation and just check what happens here. You can clearly see the fabric becoming a bit more stiff, a bit more rigid compared to what we had before. Rule number 2. If it looks good in the simulation, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will translate in the real world. Make sure that you apply the correct type of fabric for your project and check the fit using the strain map. I'm gonna stop the simulation and now let's finally address the elephant in the room. The redness. We need to find a way to add fabric in this area and towards the back. And realistically, we have two options. We can either add it here from the middle, or we can add it from the sides. And if you've ever seen a trouser block in your life, you're gonna know that the most important part is here in the crotch area. So let's try and come up with a plan in order to add some fabric here. I'm gonna press B and select the sewing line right down the middle. Right click on it and we have those two options. Add point to pattern on start and the add point to pattern on end. Which one do we need? It took me like a month playing with CLO3D before I figured this out, but it turns out that every single sewing line in CLO3D has a notch. You can see it here, you can see it here, you can see it here. It's very small and inconspicuous, but the position of the notch compared to the entire segment matters because it's located 1/4 of the way towards the start of your sewing line. So look at this. This is the middle of your sewing line. This is the quarter. And just to prove the point, if I right click and do add point to pattern on start, let's now press Z, nothing happened. We added a point, but the point was already there. Instead, I'm gonna do B, right click, and I'm gonna add a point to pattern on end. This time, when I press Z, check it, we have a point here. Let's do the same for the back. I'm gonna press B, and I want to right click, add point to pattern on end, since the notch is again towards the top. We need it on the end. Z, and we can see the two segment points. But now my question is, why don't we have them on the opposite side of the body? Since we are inherently symmetric. Our left side of the body is the same as the right side of the body. So why would we go in here and have to design everything twice? Is there no better way to do this? Of course there is. Check this out. I'm gonna press A, hold down Shift, and I want to select these two pattern pieces. Backspace in order to delete them. Now, make a selection box over the two existing ones, the ones that have the segment points done, and I'm gonna right click and do this. Clone pattern with linked editing, symmetric pattern with sewing. Or I can just press Ctrl D on my keyboard. Click them onto the side and you're gonna notice some slight shifts in the way that the patterns look. First of all, there's the blue outline which tells me that the components are linked. There are also those lines down the middle, so if I move it, it tells me exactly which other pattern piece it's linked to. It starts from the center to the center of this one. Ctrl Z since we don't actually want to move them, but most importantly, the moment when I start editing one of the components, the equivalent component also gets edited. And now we can take a sweet deep breath because we only have to design half of the pair of pants in order to end up with a full pair. Rule number 3. Always work symmetrically unless you're designing an asymmetrical piece. This way, you don't have to do the same operation twice. Your body is made of two symmetrical halves, so just use it to your advantage. The only problem is that when we deleted the components, the sewing lines also got deleted. So let's quickly sew them. I'm gonna press N, click here and click here. And let's do the same for the back. Click here and click here. And now simulate. And you're gonna notice that the attach to measure that we did before got deleted on the half that we just recreated. So into this menu, hold down the left click, again, attach to measure. Click on the segment, click on the measurement, click on the segment, click on the measurement. And now when I simulate, it's back to what we had before, but this time with the advantages of working symmetrically. And while we're here, let's also close the legs. I'm gonna press N and I'm gonna click from this side onto this side and then simulate. Oh, I wonder what happened here. This does not look right. I'm gonna do Ctrl Z, and let's try and diagnose the issue together. If you were paying attention to the 3D interface, you probably noticed that the sewing lines are meant to be parallel. But in our case, since we've sewn it in the wrong way, they look like a web. And that's not good. In reality, if you try to sew this, it literally would not work. I'm gonna press B and let's try and see what happened here. Looking at the notch, this one is towards the top, while the opposite one is towards the bottom. I did this intentionally, because I know you're gonna do it at some point in your career. But check this out. When you press N, you can see that the notch appears based on where you have the cursor positioned. So it's important that when you are sewing, you click here, and then when you go to the opposite panel, you have to make sure that the notch is also located where you want it to be. In order to fix it, I'm gonna press B, select my sewing line, right click, and I have this option here, reverse sewing, or I can just press Ctrl B on my keyboard. And check this out. Now in the 3D window, you can tell that those lines are parallel, and when I simulate, you're gonna see the difference. Boom. So yeah, you can probably tell it's extremely important how you are sewing the components together. And now, finally, let's go back in and figure out how we can solve this issue. I'm gonna press A, I wanna select the two components for the front and the back panel, and I'll move them to the side to clear up some space. I'm gonna press Z, select this segment point, hold down Shift, and I want to start dragging it out horizontally. I'm gonna right click and let's just try something like 60 mil. A, just move them so they're not touching or intersecting. Z, let's do exactly the same thing for the back. Right click and do 60 mil. And when I simulate, what do you think we're gonna see now? Let's try it. So the redness is almost gone. Not entirely, we still have some issues, some massive issues that we need to fix here, because look at this. Oh my god, this would be like the worst looking pant. If you went on a date wearing something like this, good luck using your charisma to lock in a second date. It's not gonna happen. So let's see what we can do about it in order to have them date ready. I'm gonna open up this application, PureRef, which is absolute godsend when it comes to designing stuff and recreating it in CLO3D. And it allows me to input my reference, and then I can also pin it always on top. So even if I'm clicking inside of CLO3D, the reference doesn't go away. Why did I bring it up? Well, we need to figure out exactly how low we want the crotch to be, because at the moment one of the biggest issues here is the fact that the crotch is not low enough. Let's have a look at the reference. I reckon between here and here we have about a 16 centimeter drop. So I'm gonna press Z, select both segment points for the front and the back panel, and I want to start dragging them down. Holding Shift, right click, and let's just input our custom value. I'm gonna do 160. Simulate, and we can see that, okay, the crotch was dropped, but the pants are starting to look a bit weird around this area. We're not quite sure why, but there is a very intuitive way to see it, and I wish that I came up with this technique like a couple years ago, because it would have literally saved me like months of diagnostics. I'm gonna press B, and I want to select this sewing line and just drag it up. I only want to have it closed for around 2 centimeters. This is for the front panels, and let's do exactly the same thing for the back. Lift it. Okay, and now when I simulate, what can you see here? The fact that the crotch is not meeting down the middle. But in order to have the design look good, it has to be meeting down the middle. And now, since we do want to be extremely precise with this shape, I suggest that we switch over from the normal simulation to the fitting accurate fabric simulation. So hold down the left click and go for this option here. When I simulate, you're gonna notice that the fabric has a more natural drape, but at the same time, the computer is gonna slow down massively. So you only wanna use this kind of simulation when you have to be precise, like in this very step here. I'm gonna press A, select the two panels and just move them towards the right in order to free up some space. Z, I'm gonna select this point and I want to start dragging it towards the left, right click, and I reckon to get here we need around 35 mil. Let's try it. This is for the front panel. Let's do exactly the same thing for the back panel. So 35 mil. Let's simulate and have a look. It seems like they haven't quite met at the base, but they're intersecting towards the top. I wonder why that is. I'm gonna select the front and the back panel, and on my keyboard I'm gonna press Shift Q, which doesn't delete the pieces, it just makes them invisible. Then I also want to go into this menu and disable the visibility for the avatar. And now we can truly see where the issue was. Right here. We don't want to have this sharp edge. We need those two panels to have a smooth transition. Which takes us to rule number 4. Respect the 180 rule. Which basically means this: two segments that are sewn together, at the ends where they meet, the angles must add up to 180. I know it sounds like a boring university lecture, but here are 3 separate examples that will make it clear. In the first example, we have the ideal solution, where 2 components get sewn all the way from top to bottom, thus automatically applying the 180 rule. But what if we keep the same 2 pieces, but this time only sew them halfway? This results in a 0-degree situation. To fix it, I'll curve both sides inward till I achieve this 180-degree angle right where they connect. Boom, 180 rule applied. What about this third example? Well, in this case we have the opposite problem, since the angle is now bigger than 180. To fix it, we'll again use curve points, but this time let's bring both sides up equally, which will result in this 180-degree angle. And the better way to think of it is the 180 rule is a smoothing rule, since it transforms sharp corners into smooth, rounded features. Oh, and by the way, I've added more examples of how the 180 rule gets applied over on Patreon, together with the CLO3D project for this pair. That includes the textures, in case you want to do some experimenting on your own. Now, let's see how you can apply the 180 rule in the crotch area. I'm gonna press Z. I want to select this segment, hold down Shift, and select the opposite segment where the 2 components get sewn together. I'm gonna right click and I want to match them up to start. So check this out. Now we can see in the 2D window exactly what is happening in the 3D window. And now I have to introduce a new tool. Over here in this menu, if I hold down the left click, I can find this option, Edit Curve Point, which is by far the best way that you can edit curves inside of CLO3D. Stay away from this. Stay away from edit curvature. Stay away from Bezier handles. If you've learned it from any other tutorial, just don't. Undo it, alright? I'm here to teach you the best way. So check it. I'm gonna open this option, which is gonna give me access to those red points. I'm gonna click once on the segment, and then I can actually maneuver this point in order to apply the 180 rule. So I'm gonna do this for the front panel. Let's use another point for the back panel and drag it down. We wanna keep it quite close to the segment point. So what we did is we created a smooth transition between the front and the back panel where they meet. So the 180 rule is pretty much applied. Let's see if this actually fixed the problem. I'm gonna press Shift W to bring back the visibility of all of the pattern pieces. Let's also bring in the avatar, so Shift A, and yikes. We ended up creating a bigger issue than we had before. What can we do about it? Let's have a look at this shape. I'm gonna press V and I want to create another curve point so that from here we have more of a 90-degree angle. We need to win back the fabric that we just lost, and we can do it with a single curve point. So let's just bring this point out until we can see the 90 degrees here. And let's do exactly the same thing for the back panel. Okay, there we go. space in order to simulate, and we can see that the points are almost touching, but the gap is still quite large in the center. We can also add fabric here and here, both on the front and the back panel, and that fabric is gonna help us fill in the gap. Before we do that, we have a bit of a problem. This panel has not been moved, but this one has. So for instance, if I wanted to do any sort of modification, if I start dragging this horizontally, or I start dragging this one horizontally, this is gonna skew the entire design, which is gonna cause massive issues later down the line. We want to rotate it so that it stays exactly like this panel, vertical. In order to rotate it, I'm gonna select the panel, and over in the property editor on the bottom right, if I scroll down, there is this option here, grain direction. But what exactly is the grain direction? And does it have anything to do with the grain line? Well, it's exactly the same thing. And now, let's understand what it means. The grain line is an imaginary line parallel to the height of the garment. We use it as reference when cutting the fabric. And in CLO3D, we can enable the visibility of the grain line from this menu. It's important to reset the rotation according to the grain line before doing any modifications to the pattern pieces. I'm gonna do Ctrl Z and show you another way to do this. You can select the panel, right click, rotate, and you can also do this, reset along grain direction, which is exactly the same option, it's just from a different menu. Now I want to move the panel here, align it with this one at the top, and then I want to shift both of them out of the way. I'll move Pure Ref back, and let's figure out where we can add some fabric. The best location is here. The bum is by far the thickest point, so we have to add fabric in order to compensate for it. If I click in the 3D window, you're gonna see this blue dot appear in the 2D window. If you do it the opposite way, if you click in the 2D window, it doesn't show up here. So we need to use this reference in order to add a bit of fabric. After clicking, I'm gonna do V, and I want to create a curve point right next to where the blue dot appeared. Create one here. Let's do another one for the front panel. And then I'm gonna select the point, start dragging it towards the right, hold down Shift, and I want to add 14 mil for this. Let's do the same for the back panel, 14 mil. Press OK. But you can probably see that we've added way too much fabric towards this area. So we want to create another couple curve points again, and I want to shift this one back. So I'm pretty much removing the fabric that we've just added. We only want to have extra fabric towards the top, towards where the bum is. So let's grab this one, move it in, zoom out so I make sure that I'm getting a straight line at the end, and there we have it. I'm gonna press 2. Something happened in the 3D window. This is just some weird behavior from CLO3D. You don't have to worry about it at all. Let's just simulate and see what that did. So check this out. If I look at my pants now, they're meeting perfectly down the middle. In the front, at least. In the back, not yet. So the thing is, the bum is again the biggest feature that we have to account for. Therefore, we need to add even more fabric at the back compared to what we have at the front. I'm gonna press Z, I'm just gonna select this point, start dragging it towards the right, and let's add a couple centimeters. So I'm gonna do 20 mil. Simulate, and let's just make sure that the gap is now filled, which it seems to be, yeah. I'm gonna press B, and I want to extend the sewing lines back to what they were previously. Drag this one, drag this one, drag this one. Okay, press 2, space. Now it's time to finally start cutting into them, because I'm sick and tired of seeing this super high waist pant which doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna head over to this menu, hold down the left click, and I want to go for circumference measure garment. I'm gonna press 2. I'm gonna open up the visibility menu, and I want to make the pants translucent. And then I'm gonna click to where I want my final height without the waistband of the trousers to be. So probably around this point at the front, but at the back we need it to be much taller. So to adjust it, I'm gonna select this option. I'm gonna click on the measurement, click on the circle, press 4 in order to go from the profile view, and we can use the gizmo, the blue gizmo, in order to rotate it, and we can use this small square in order to move it. I'm gonna move it up a tiny bit, and then I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna do cut. Let's go back into the monochromatic view, Q, select the components at the front, select the components at the back, and delete them. Create another one of those measurements in order to attach the pants to it. So basic circumference measure, press 2, this is how tall they went before, and we actually want them much lower this time. I'm gonna click once at the front, click a second time at the back, so I'm looking at where the height of the pants is currently, and then 2 in order to go from the front view, and I want to place this one symmetrically. Hold down the left click here, and I'm gonna do attach to measure one more time. So let's select here, click here, boom. Let's do the back, click here, click here, click here, click here. Sim. In the 2D window, I'm gonna do A, Control A, right click, and I'm gonna do rotate, reset along grain line direction. And I noticed that I have a bit of an issue here. This line should not go out. Let's fix it very quickly. So zoom in and let's just straighten it. So since we cut the top with the technique that I've just shown you, check this out. If I select the 2 out scenes and match them up to start, boom. Perfect 180 rule automatically applied. We don't have to do this manually. What about the front? Well, check this out. I'm selecting the 2 panels. These we have to rotate manually because otherwise it's not gonna work. 180 rule applied. Now let's have a look at the back. So same thing, I'm just moving them over, rotating them till the line is parallel towards the top. Something like this. We do have a bit of an issue here. So let's quickly fix it. V. And I want to just move this one down very slightly. Control A, right click, rotate, reset. And now let's move this entire piece back. I'm gonna make a selection box, and now I want to relocate all of the pattern pieces so they make a bit more sense visually. Something like this. Simulate, boom. While they might look great at this stage, we're not sure that they're gonna be comfortable to wear in the real world, but there is a way to find out. So over in the avatar tab, I'm gonna double click, open up the male V2, and then I want to go into this folder here, motion. And I'm gonna select the very first option. I'm gonna press OK. And on the top right, I'm gonna switch from the simulation tab into the animation tab. Let's press on the record button on the bottom left, and let's wait for it to do its thing. So I'm gonna stop the simulation to a point where the pants are getting stretched out. Let's say around here. We can definitely see a bit of a problem, but I wanna manually start the simulation, and let's just diagnose it together. If you have redness in this crotch area, it means that you've made the pants way too tight. You need to add fabric. And you may also need to add it here towards the hip. But in our case, this seems to be quite perfect. Look. I can actually release the tension. There we go. Without lifting the pants up. Because if you do this and you just lift them up, you're kind of cheating. Because now you're wearing shorts. You'd have to lift them as you're walking. It doesn't make any sense. But it seems to me that we've done a pretty magnificent job. But I do want to show you what you'd have to do in case you want to make them maybe a bit more comfortable than this. So check this out. I'm gonna start the simulation, head over into this menu, and open up this option, show X-ray joints. I'm gonna select the top joint here for one of the legs and enable the mirroring. Using the blue circle, I'm gonna rotate the legs slightly away from the body. Maybe to something like this. I now want to stop the simulation, get out of the X-ray mode, and I would have to go in, select this sewing line, bring it back up, select this sewing line, bring it up, and now sim. So the idea is quite simple. The more that you spread the legs of the avatar in your design stage, the more fabric that you are gonna need to add here in order to fill in the gap. If you have more fabric, it's easier to move in those pants. So in this case, if you wanted to fix it, you'd have to select those curve points, start dragging them out, let's say by an extra 7 mil. Do the same for the back panel, an extra 7 mil, sim. And now they're actually quite perfect. So those pants are a bit more comfortable than the version that we had before. And if you want to go into extremes and you want to drop the crotch even lower, then you really have to spread the legs a lot. Literally. The character has to do splits in order to make them comfortable if the crotch is any lower. This is like the lowest point that you can go before it starts to become a burden and you can no longer wear them. So this one is super low, and you can see that there is some excess fabric in between the legs. You can see when the character is sitting as such, they've added extra fabric in order to make it wearable. In our case, we're fine. I'm gonna do Ctrl Z and go back on all of those steps. Mastering the crotch area is the most important skill in designing pants, and it makes a difference between a wearable pair and a completely useless one. First thing to keep in mind, the more that you spread the legs in the X-ray view, the more fabric you need to add, therefore, the more comfortable the final pair will be with that same drop. But do it too much and you'll have a lot of extra fabric in between the legs, which can look pretty damn bad. The second thing, the lower that you drop the crotch without compensating with extra fabric between the legs, the more difficult it will be to wear them in the real world. This is why sportswear is extremely tight, so it doesn't impede the motion. Back to the video. Time to start adding a bit of bulk to the silhouette, which is one of the most fun, creative aspects of designing trousers. First of all, looking at the gap in between the legs and comparing it to the originals, I can tell that we need to add a lot of fabric onto this edge. Very easy. Z, I want to grab the point, start dragging it towards the left, right click, and I think I'm gonna do 70 mil. Let's do the same for the back, select it, start dragging it, right click, 70 mil. Start the simulation. Next up, I want to take care of the overall length. I'm gonna press Z, I'm gonna select both segments on the base, and I want to hold down Shift and start dragging them vertically. Right click and, I don't know, let's just try 120, see where that gets us. Start the simulation. Stop the simulation. If you find yourself in a situation like this, it's easy to just move the panel away in order to clear up the collision, and then restart the simulation. And we need to figure out one of the most important aspects which directly influences the wearability of the denim. At this stage, the opening is a bit too much. It's massive. You would only be able to wear those with super big chunky shoes. But there is a very easy fix to this. Why don't we actually close up the opening a bit and then take care of the bulk and the volume that we need by using a very drastic taper. Okay, but how are we gonna do that? It is a bit annoying, but we have to go back onto the base. I'm gonna grab this point and I need to actually drag it back in. So the modification that we did, we're kind of going back on it because it affects the opening way too much. I'm gonna tuck them in by 45 and let's see what that looks like. Do the same for the front panel. And now the pants are super skinny, but I am again more worried just about the opening. I want to make sure that it's never actually falling onto the ground, even if you're wearing something like this, like a tennis shoe. And with this opening, I think we're gonna be fine. Let's select both. This is a 480 opening. Pretty good. But now I need to bring some of that bulk back. I'm gonna press V and I want to create a curve point here, which I'm then gonna drag out quite drastically. Let's make it super exaggerated first and then dial it back in. Select the back panel, move it aside to free up some space. V. Let's add a bit of bulk on this side as well. And I want to simulate and just see what that looks like. Here's the shape that we're after. Let's see what we have at the moment. Okay. Actually, this feels good. I thought I was doing it in an exaggerated manner, but it's not very exaggerated. The thing that is throwing you off is this shape here, because it goes out and then it goes back in and back out and back in. It shouldn't be like that. We need to come in here and fix those curve points. I'm gonna press V and I want to grab this one, extend it out. I'm gonna create another point here and tuck it back in, just so we're smoothing out the feature, we don't have it as exaggerated. And as much as possible, you do want to avoid the shapes going all squiggly like this. Those 2 points I'm gonna grab. Let's try and shift them down. This one specifically is causing the biggest part of the problem. I'm gonna drag it down. So now this shape makes a lot more sense to me. It goes straight out and then it tapers in right towards the base. And we can probably exaggerate this even further. I see them as being extremely exaggerated. This is where the pair stands out. And we wanna make sure that we capture that. Okay, then we need to also straighten this part of the feature. Let's simulate and see what that looks like. Well, there we have it, kinda. Oh my god, those look incredible. They are too exaggerated at this stage. I don't like them like this. You could go for something like this if you are a fan. I am just not. So let's see what we can do about it. V. Let's dial it back. Dial this one back. And then I want to straighten this one and maybe even this point here. I'm also gonna select this curve point, move it out, just so we get a slightly straighter line. And as long as you're just adding fabric, there is nothing to worry about at this stage. We already set the parameters for the body, so unless we are removing stuff, we're gonna be good. We're only making it more comfortable, if anything. And then I want to insist with those 2 curve points at the bottom, and I want to drag them down even further, just so I get a more drastic angle here. So check this out, I'm holding down Shift. Let's go for something as intense as this. The one in the front, maybe a bit more. Okay, there we have it. I'm gonna try and curve it back in. Here, add another curve point. And let's see what this looks like. I'm gonna start the simulation, and this is exactly the effect that I'm after. I might wanna remove a bit of fabric here in between the legs, and in order to do it, I'm just gonna grab this. Let's shift it back by 15. Let's do the same for the back panel, 15. Start the sim and let's see what's happening here. And this looks goddamn incredible. You can play with this as much as you want, but as you can see, even the smallest of alterations makes a huge difference. We need to do a final checkup here in the crotch area. So I want to again select the basic circumference measure, and I want to do the same measurement just where the pants are naturally sitting. Then we're gonna go for attach to measure. Pin them onto the measurement. So segment, measurement, segment, measurement. Go around, do all 4. Start the simulation. Now I'm gonna press B and I want to shift the sewing line towards the top. The reason being, we made so many modifications on the side of the trouser that we could potentially have screwed this entire thing up. Design is a very iterative process, so you have to do stuff, it's gonna mess up other stuff, and then you just gotta go back and forth over and over and over again till you get it to look perfect. I'm gonna start the simulation, and exactly, there you go. Just as I anticipated, we're missing a bit of fabric here. So let's add it by pressing Z, shifting this point over. I'm gonna do 6 mil. We only need small increments here. I'm also doing the back. Let's do a bit more, let's try 8. But there we go. Now we have a much nicer overlap. At the back, we still could use a bit more, so let's do an extra 6 millimeters. Now, we're good. I'm gonna press B. Let's shift the lines back. Start the simulation, and let's have a look at those puppies here. I honestly couldn't be happier. If you're finding the design process enjoyable and want to take the project to the next step, the rest of the series is now available, and it can be accessed by purchasing the GRMNT Masterclass. That includes how to adapt the trousers to your own size, and for the first time, we've done both men's and women's for the same product. Then we'll learn how to print the patterns using an A4 printer, and we'll be off to the atelier to learn how to sew them into this incredible one-of-a-kind piece. We'll be discussing sewing techniques, equipment, fabrics, embroidery, bleaching, the whole deal. It's a very fun project, and I haven't even mentioned the best part. The final chapter covers how to create and use an avatar like myself. Oh, and we also have a lot more designer pieces that we've covered in the past, so make sure you check it out. Back to the video. Let's take care of the pockets. I'm gonna do the front ones first, and I have to introduce a new tool, which is called the internal polygon / line, or you can just press G on your keyboard. I'm gonna click here on the front panel and take it towards the side. Then I'm pressing V in order to shape it. I think we need to do it a bit wider. I'm pressing Z, shifting the internal line as such, making it slightly larger. And I think this actually, yeah, it looks fairly good. Maybe shift it a bit more. Yep, there we go. Now let's do the back pockets. You can see them here in the reference image. We need another tool for that, which is the internal rectangle. I'm just gonna click onto the panel, press OK. A, select it, and we can scale it just like we did before. We need to lower it. We need to make it bigger. I'm gonna press X, and I wanna split this internal line. Drag the point, hold down Shift, and let's try and match it with the shape that we have here. Now I'm realizing that maybe we made them a bit too long, so I'm gonna press Z, select the base segments, hold down Shift, lift them up. And in terms of positioning, we need to reference it compared to this, where the waistband is. So I'm gonna press A, select the pocket, shift it even lower. Maybe a bit lower than this. Yeah, this I'm really feeling. Now let's try and create the yoke. I'm gonna press G again in order to bring out the internal line, and I'm simply gonna connect this. Lift it a bit, and there we go. Perfect. I'm gonna press Z, select the internal line, right click, and I wanna do cut and sew. And this yoke is gonna allow us to remove a bit more fabric here at the back, which kind of behaves like a dart. It's gonna tighten up only the top of the trouser. Let's detach it from the body so you see exactly what I'm talking about. I want to go into this menu, edit measure, Control A, backspace to delete the measurement. I'm gonna sim again, the pants are gonna start to sag. Let's just lift them up manually. And if you have a look at the back, we have a lot of excess fabric. We're gonna use this newly created component in order to get rid of it. So I'm gonna select the point here, and I just want to tuck it in. Hold down Shift, and let's try and do 18 mil, which is a massive amount. Start the simulation, and let's just have a look at this. You can see how much this is hugging the body towards the top, but at the same time, it caused a bit of an issue that we also need to fix. So the culprit in this situation is again the 180 rule. Let's have a look. I'm gonna grab the two back panels. I wanna align them and get them till those lines here are parallel to one another. And now I'm gonna select the yoke. I wanna move them over one next to another, and let's rotate and see what's happening here. So you can see how the components are kind of pushing into the back panel. And to compensate for it, we need to grab this, move it up, and I'm even gonna add a bit of a curve here. On top of that, we also want to make sure that we're respecting the 180 rule here, where the two components get sewn together. And then I'm also gonna straighten it from here. And now I can actually lift this point up. But here's the thing, the components are no longer matching in length. So I'm gonna press B, and I can see that there is a 5.6 millimeter difference between them, which we can pretty much do from this side here. I'm gonna press Z, and let's just bring it out, 5.6. This again changes our angle, so we need to reapply the 180 rule. Let's go here, V, and we just need to cut into it a bit more. Okay, there we go. Grab the point and lift it even further. V, we need to apply the 180 rule here. And I'm also gonna do it here because we don't want to have this sharp corner right in the middle. The only thing that we're missing at this stage is the waistband. In order to create it, I'm gonna press Z, hold down Shift, select the front panel, select the top of the yoke, and I'm gonna use this measurement in order to create my waistband. Press S to bring out the rectangle tool, and I'm gonna type in 430.3 by, let's do it 42 mil in terms of width, which is pretty much like a standard measure. I'm gonna press M, and I want to teach you a new way to sew multiple components at once. So here is the technique. You want to first sew the longer segment and hold down Shift. I'm gonna start at the front, go towards the outseam, and then I want to continue onto the yoke from the outseam side and take it all the way towards the center back. When I release Shift, you're gonna see two sewing lines getting created at once. I'm gonna select the waistband in the 3D window, right click, and I'm gonna do superimpose side. Start the simulation, and we're just missing the opposite component, the symmetrical one. Do you remember what the shortcut for this was? Say it with me. Control D. Boom. There we go. Start the simulation. And in order to bring out the segment sewing, sew it at the front. Do the same for the back. I can't access it from the 3D window. Okay, and I'm noticing here at the back that we have a bit of bunching up. And check this out, if I start the simulation and I imagine lifting the pants, this would solve it with no issue. I'm gonna press Z, look for the back panel here. I'm gonna grab the segment point, shift it down, let's say by 25 mil. Start the sim again. Have a look at this. How much nicer it's sitting now. Let's now see how we can do the pockets so we also see them inside a CLO3D. For the back pocket, it's super straightforward. I'm gonna press Z, double click on the internal line, right click, and I'm gonna select this option, Clone as Pattern. I'm gonna click it in the 2D window, and guess what? A component automatically gets created. Let's press M and sew it very quickly. Start at the top, take it towards the opposite top. Let's do the same. We can sew components directly onto internal lines, which is an incredibly useful tool. In the 3D window, I want to select the pocket, right click, and I'm gonna do superimpose over, which automatically snaps it in place. Let's now duplicate it onto the opposite side. And again, how do we do that? I'm gonna press Control D and just click it. Start the simulation, and there you have it. We got the two back pockets. What about the front ones? Well, for these, it's a bit more complicated because first of all, we need to create the pocket bag. And when it comes to baggy jeans, I like to make them as oversized as humanly possible, which makes it a dream to actually wear the pair in the real world. I'm gonna press G, and I want to create another internal line, which now represents the pocket bag. So I'm gonna click it here towards the outseam, create another curve point. This would fit probably like a MacBook Air. But okay, let's not exaggerate it as far. Let's lift this puppy up a bit and go for something like this. I'm now gonna grab the entire front panel, do Control C, Control V, and I want to copy it below because we want to extract from this only the pocket bag component. I'm gonna press Z, right click, and I want to do Cut. A. Select this entire piece that we no longer need, and I'm gonna press backspace in order to delete it. So this is one of the components for the pocket bag, the more important one, the one that we see from the exterior, but we also need the one that lives in the interior. So I'm gonna do this, Control C, Control V, copy it here. I'm gonna select the internal line again and right click, do Cut. I wanna select this component and just delete it. So those front pockets are made of two components. One that actually gets sewn onto the main assembly and another one that gets hidden inside. Let's now go to the main front panel. Select this internal line, so only the small component, right click, and I'm gonna do Cut. And I want to delete it. Let's also delete it on the opposite side. And now it's time to sew this component here, to replace it pretty much. How do we do that? Well, I'm gonna press M and I want to sew it first towards the back panel. I'm gonna hold down Shift in order to sew multiple segments at once. Let's take it starting from the yoke and then continue onto this panel. Then I also want to sew it into the waistband. So I'm gonna click from here to here, and I can see a spot where we don't have any sewing line since we deleted this component. I want to start here and I want to take it to where the blue dot appears. And that's pretty much done. One of the components is sewn. I just want to move it towards the interior, and I'm gonna simulate. Check it out. And now let's connect the smaller component. Press N and I want to sew it from here
to here. And I also want to sew it with M, starting from here, and let's just take it up. I'm gonna connect it from here to here, and then the final sewing line connects it from here to the main panel. There we go. Q. Let's move this one in front. This one goes below. Start the simulation. Pocket bag, done. But hypothetically, let's just say that you started the simulation without arranging all of the pattern pieces properly. And now you have something that looks like this. How do you fix it? Well, there is a more advanced technique which tells CLO3D which layer should be on top and which layer should be below it. And it has to do with this tool here called Set Sublayer. I'm gonna select it and I'm gonna click first this pattern piece and then I want to click this one. So now I'm basically telling CLO, this one I want below this one. Let's start the simulation and see if it works. Check it. It automatically snaps it out, so that's very convenient for us. And then I also want to tell it that the main front panel should be on top of this pocket bag component. So I'm going to select this one first and select this one after. Let's start the sim and see what happens. Okay, maybe not much, just because the pattern pieces are not making full-on contact, but let's just try and help it a bit. So I moved it down. Check it out, we can kind of manually arrange it, but as you saw, it was much quicker to just anticipate what's gonna happen before you start the simulation. But let's say that we do want to fix this. I'm gonna select the front panel, press Shift Q. In order to make it invisible, again, it doesn't get deleted, it just goes away. Start the simulation, and now I can just drag it manually. And now you can see what's happening inside of the trouser, and then when I do Shift W, we get to see the entire assembly. Let's now duplicate it symmetrically on the opposite side. So I'm gonna do just Control D as we kept doing. I'm gonna grab the front panel and move it out and then start the simulation. Amazing, we have pockets. The final thing that we have to take care of is the hem on the base. The thing is, the pants are stacked and we can't really tell if the hem is straight. In order to best visualize it, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna head over to the simulation tab, hold down my left click, and I want to just release the click over the fitting accurate fabric. Release it. And what did that do? It doesn't seem like much, but check this out. I'm gonna move PureRef out of the way. This operation gives us access to the property editor. And then here we can change the gravity of the trousers from the default value of -9800. I'm gonna change it to 0. So pretty much they're gonna be floating in space. But in order to see the effect happening, we have to move the pants outside of the avatar. I'm gonna press Ctrl A in order to select all of the pattern pieces, zoom out, and then I just want to move it aside. Start the simulation and check out what happens this time. I'm gonna try and help it so it straightens out. Control A, right click, and I'm just gonna use this operation called strengthen, which doesn't actually change the fabric. It just makes the existing one a lot stiffer. It still doesn't look right here. Now it does. I'm gonna stop the simulation, select all of the components, and now my mission is to actually arrange it perfectly horizontal to the ground. I'm gonna rotate the pants so it's also oriented from the profile. It looks good from the profile, it looks good from the front. Now, I wanna head over into this menu and go for the circumference measure garment tool. I'm gonna click slightly above this point and automatically a measurement is gonna get created. But the problem with CLO is it doesn't expect us to do the measurements outside of the avatar. Therefore, it placed our measurement here. But using the edit measure garment tool, I can just move it around. Click on the outline and then click on the circle in order to have access to the gizmo. And I'm gonna use this green arrow in order to position it. I wanna get it to the lowest point here. Awesome. And then I'm gonna use this in order to cut the pants. So right click and I wanna do cut. There we have it. A, select the components that we don't want, backspace to delete them, and have a look at this. perfectly level hem. How amazing is that? I want to select all the components and now bring them back onto the avatar. 5 to go from the top view. Let's try and get it roughly in the correct position. And in order to reset the simulation how it was before, you do the same thing. So you just hold the left click down, and once you release it, it's gonna go to the default setting. So check this out. I just release it, and if I check here, it has the default value for gravity. So once I simulate, boom, Vetements. Let's now save the project by pressing File, Save As, Project. Well done. Boom.
It's insane to think we started from a square and now we got this. Now imagine how much more fun it will be to actually make it in the real world and have the pair in your hands. Make sure you join the masterclass and we'll see you in the next chapter.